Guess who's back? Back again. Okay, that's enough. I can't do that for very long without YouTube putting me in some sort of camp. But hey, I'm back. This is part 3 of a grand series, and if you haven't seen the others, I'd recommend you watch them later. Stick around though, as each of these can work in a vacuum. They're all set in different times regardless. We're covering the usual, the apocalypse. Let's see what's on the menu, shall we? So, where we left off last time, we were sort of at an impasse. Survivors are starting to come together and settle down, creating new civilizations in the post-apocalypse. You have your farmers, your hunters, your looters. Every cog is an important part of the new society. We can imagine the world coming to shape in more of a civilized medieval age. Corporations are gone, people have total freedom to do as they please. It'd be hard at first, but once these villagers had dug their heels into the ground they settled, it'd take one hell of a storm for them to be removed. The type of storm we're talking about here is the new bandit craze. The complete collapse of laws and any real governments has seemed to spawn the rise of the apocalypse bandit culture. This dog-eat-dog mentality that now has become the norm will make the average time spent in this post-apocalyptic world in one of two mentalities. Either this extremely paranoid, self-serving dog-eat-dog lifestyle of pillaging and looting settlements and more places as they go, or this more relaxed and caring style of settlement and rebuilding. You can separate these more simply like this. The ones on the left are the anarchistic bandits that live on violence and fear-mongering through things like conquest and protection rackets, and on the right we have the settlers, the ones who want to rebuild society and make a sort of government. Either of these can be theoretically self-sufficient in some way, but the bandits suffer from not being able to farm effectively as they need to stay on the move, lest they become a settled civilization, which is a very probable outcome. Over an amount of time, a lot of bandit groups would probably settle down once they felt they were happy with what was in their coffers. However, you probably start to see a trend of bandits constructing their own sort of outposts. Not total settlements, but just enough to call it a base to operate from. These bandit groups are unstable by definition. Their leaders can't be at every single outpost at all times, so obviously there's going to be some severe issues with both chain of command and brutality. The more brutal bandit groups will obviously be some of the most dangerous, but that will also lead to a level of disloyalty, ensuring a natural amount of instability. The better a group can balance its authority and its outward image to the rest of the world, then the better for their general safety. They can't be too brutish as they want to keep loyal followers, but they also have to try to keep their teeth sharpened to make sure their benefactors still pay up. The case is mostly reversed for the side of the settlers. However, their groups will likely revolve far less around destructive tendencies, instead revolving around more progressive things like better medicine, scientific breakthroughs, technological rejuvenation. It'd be a grand time to live in one of these more established and well-protected settlements. Just imagine all the usual things of medieval life now with the most modern ailments. Whilst modern medicine and technology is probably falling apart by now, there's got to be at least a few working things and a couple extra meds laying around somewhere. But there's nothing stopping you from reverse engineering those things and making them yourself. It'd be like stumbling upon a gold mine. These settlements are a trader's paradise, assuming they have some sort of security or policing, which would be the main countermeasure against banditry. A defensive armed force tasked with defending the settlement. These groups are built for safety and a feeling of home. This is the new state of the world. Genius inventors, hopeful settlers, savage bandits, traders up to their necks in riches, and many other groups off doing their own thing. We've just covered 2 of those groups. Let's take a look at the traders, shall we? Here's a question to pose to you. What makes your money worth anything at all? It's just paper, right? Not exactly, or at least it is now with government going kaplooey. Originally, money was backed by gold, which you could trade in at the bank and just straight up get gold back. They stopped doing this for quite a few reasons, and ever since then, the only thing backing up cash is the fact that you'll get arrested for not using it. So what is the use of cash in an apocalypse? Well, fucking nothing. You're better off burning it. Most traders will opt for a bartering system, trading items for other items instead of some sort of currency. You'll probably see pretty common trades like materials for food, or certain specific items for certain other specific items. It will vary from trader to trader, as every single one of them will be after something else. That's where your ability to barter will come in. Haggling will be the only discount you'll find. Ain't no discount codes here. However, that may vary from customer to customer. Doing a specific job for a trader could possibly get you a discount. But we see a trend from time to time, at least in video games, that there's usually some sort of currency that overshadows absolutely everything. How close is that to reality? Well, it's probably not that far actually, considering we as a society made the switch over to metals and coins in the past. Who's to say we wouldn't do the same? The most likely choice is to go back to gold, silver and bronze the same way we've been doing since 1000 BC, value coming from the item's weight instead of what it's marked with. But what if we really did want to standardize a currency? Look at gaming once more. The obvious one pops its head up: Fallout and their caps. These are metal bottle caps that are commonly used as a currency region-wide. Fallout is actually a great rule of thumb. Many of the societies across Fallout stick to the bottle cap as a standard currency, but some groups, such as the New California Republic, print their own paper dollars, which were backed by gold originally, but upon being raided quickly became a fiat currency with no actual backing, which led to the birth of the bottle cap as a currency in itself. Caps are directly backed by water, thus giving them an actual value, and honestly, they aren't a half-bad currency in the apocalypse at all. They're actually a great choice, as the technology to actually manufacture more of these is either broken or closely monitored, and that makes counterfeiting and inflation virtually a non-issue. They're durable, lightweight, and stable, thus they get the apocalypse seal of approval. However, just about anything can be a currency, but many will quickly fail. Food may seem like a pretty good choice, but it quite literally rots away over time, and well, that kind of throws saving out the window. Get your mind running. See if you can think of anything good to use as a currency and comment it below. I'm genuinely curious to hear suggestions. Moving on, remember those scrappy weapons we thought of last video? What if we took that same idea and then sized it up to a firearm or a sort of long arm? Over time, firearms are going to degrade if they're in the wrong hands. The ones with the modern firearms are a very privileged group, but if they don't care for their weapons, then they'll be just as helpless as they were without it. The privileged ones will merely have to clean and clear, just as they've probably already been doing. The more responsible a nation's firearm culture is, the odds of finding a nice, functional firearm will be higher, scaling with its cultural ties. The United States being the obvious example with this, for their interesting culture around firearms. However, the ideal types of long arm for the apocalypse aren't actually what you'd expect. You don't want a big, loud minigun, as that thing's just going to attract more problems than it can deal with. Plus, it's going to chew through ammo quicker than you can actually find it. The ideal weapon will be used more for hunting or saved as a powerful last resort. Think of shotguns and rifles for that niche. Whilst your full auto rifles are obviously still a good choice, they likely won't always be fully loaded. It's a trade-off really. What you want to do is balance weight and effectiveness. If something is heavy and not too worth it, you shouldn't be carrying it. As for those scrappy firearms that were briefly mentioned before, all it takes is a bit of engineering know-how to turn some scraps into a firearm. Add some reverse engineering and you can make just about anything, so good luck on that front. Speaking of engineering, having just about any specific skill set or knowledge can very easily be turned into an asset. The entire world is a vast ocean of opportunities for the creative-minded, so go wild. Put together that extremely dangerous car that'll probably explode the second you put the keys in the ignition. It's your funeral after all, and at least you're going out in something cool. So, do you remember how in the first video I mentioned that the zombies in the scenario aren't actually dead? Yeah, that mattered actually. You see, in many cases with zombies, you can't see them surviving for very long without some kind of evolution or mutation. And by letting these zombies being a living being, we can pull a sci-fi guess and say that they would probably evolve in some way. Last time we picked out 2 specific evolutions that would come up, to make sure there was a level of balance. It could be worse than this, and it definitely could be better. The ones we picked were hunters and a sort of clicker adjacent creature, without its typical fungal parts. The hunters are the main predator for humanity. They can pounce people and tear them limb from limb with ease. However, their power quickly falls off when survivors travel in groups. Think of the hunters as a more aggressive type of zombie that thrives on disorganized groups, but fails in most other situations, almost like an assassin. Then the part of the clickers that we're taking is their dormant stasis feature. This won't really be a special infected thing, but instead more of a commonly found need for the infected, as the number of easily chomped on humans suddenly plummets, and the infected have to rely on animals, to which they are unlikely to actually win against in most cases. However, against prey animals they have a better chance. This dormant state lets the infected have a longer lifespan, and lets the zombie use the nutrients from its recent kill more effectively. During this dormant state, they'll be pretty much asleep, awaiting some kind of sound or scent to signal the next meal. This could lead to the sort of nest-like areas that we see in Dying Light 2, where you have to weave between the infected as to not alert the entire building you're in. The zombies would just become a subsect of humanity, an offshoot caused by the virus. Whether these infected could actually evolve further and become intelligent, really depends on the situation. There's not many ways to track the direction that the infected are going evolutionary without some kind of scientific intervention. Whilst it's incredibly risky, the idea of studying and housing a number of infected would be the only way to track the direction they're going. However, I do see the risk entwined with them. It's up to you if you want to go ahead with those studies or not. This would probably be a pretty hot button issue when it comes to the post-apocalyptic political world. We're not covering that though. This is how to survive, not how to make your favourable society. Now with all this settling down and rebuilding, we find another thing. A new generation of people will be born without the knowledge of what the world was like before the apocalypse. What was sci-fi to us will be natural life to them. They probably find it bewildering to think about what our society was like before it all collapsed. It's our responsibility as the elders to teach the new generation of what came before. With the new generation growing in this world, they'll probably have some issues right off the bat. Think childhood trauma, as that would probably be through the roof considering their lives are now entangled with death. It's important to teach the difference between humans and the infected. Emphasize the point that they aren't like us anymore, although at some point they were. This new generation will probably look at our retelling of the world with doe eyes, imagining mountains of food and endless lounging. Whilst comparatively, yeah, sure, that's true. Be sure to remind them that it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. But I won't tell you how to raise the next generation. They don't even exist yet, and probably won't exist for a while. Until then, we can only speculate about them. Consider this an open invite to discussion in the comments. What would the next generation really be like? I guess we'll just have to see, right? One thing that we know for a fact is that we need to keep alive. Shocker. A key thing that will come into play will be traps. It only takes one little grenade attached to some fishing wire to turn you into a smouldering sludge. Check doorways as you enter them for things like wire, spikes, and just about anything you could call a trap. One of the most dangerous of these would be the classic bear trap. You know it just as well as I do. Something steps on the middle plate, it goes down, triggers the trap, and suddenly your leg is gone. The reason that one of these is the most dangerous of all the traps is that it's silent. It's not deafening like the explosive options, and thus it could take out a looter without anyone being aware, as that's what causes the most deaths at this stage. Sound is going to be one of the most powerful killers worldwide. Sound attracts not just the infected, but also other survivors. Weapons like bows and other silent methods of killing. Think suppressors. No, not silencers. Silencers don't exist. These are your safest bet. Otherwise, you're using melee for everything, and by now, I'd assume you aren't half bad at it. But I'm sure you're going to want a firearm. And with that comes a few problems. One being, they're fucking loud. Like Jesus, ouch. Let's fix that, shall we? Your first thoughts are probably going to be to slap a suppressor on it and call it a day, but well, they're not particularly common. Oil filters. Oh yeah, we're going there. Turns out you can actually use an oil filter as a suppressor. This isn't even gaming bullshit, this actually works. Slap an oil filter to the muzzle of your gun and bam. Just make sure you do it after the apocalypse, as it's actually a felony. Now you've got a far quieter firearm that can be a legitimate option. Just remember that it's not John Wick levels of quiet. They're not that good. Another choice that you could go for is a bayonet made from pretty much any sharp object you have laying around. Scissors, screwdrivers, old kitchen knives, bonus points if they're rusty, but still sharp. Even if you don't take the opponent out, you can die peacefully knowing that they'll probably have tetanus. Speaking of which reminds me, medicine. We quickly scraped over it before and a couple times in the other parts, and thus I did some research. Number one piece of knowledge, if you get something stuck in you, do not pull it out. You should not, under any circumstance, try to yank something out of your body. It will probably cause more damage on the way out than it did on the way in, not to mention the bleeding. You can stop bleeding in many ways, bandages being the key pick. The main thing that makes a bandage into a bandage is pretty much just the fact that they're often completely sterile, meaning there's no bacteria or pathogens on them, or at least very few. I had to look at alcohol again to see if it really could be a sterilizing agent in the way that we're going to find it, and turns out yes, it absolutely could work. If the alcohol you're working with is anywhere above 60%, then it should theoretically work. You can even replace a few of your modern medicines with some more natural methods that are much more sustainable for you in the long run. Honey works great as a replacement for cough medicine so long as you're over the age of 1, which, well, yeah, probably. If you have any kind of burns, which let's face it, by now you probably do with all the Molotovs and insane pyromaniacs running around, you can actually use aloe vera, which legitimately works to help the healing process and even makes it less painful. Mother Nature has the solutions to your problems, which she probably caused, but we'll ignore that. Another thing that comes directly from nature that will help our farmers is actually remarkably simple. You see, a problem that will come with farmers is things like slugs and snails chomping away at their produce. But if you grind down some eggshells until it sort of forms like a powder, it'll actually be sharp enough to the point where it can discourage them from your produce. I know this series has revolved a lot around looting and, well, less moral methods to success, but there's plenty of ways to get what you need without violating your own moral code. The apocalypse may be a brutal place, but it'll treat you the way you treat it. If you're a deranged psychopath tearing your way through every single town with murder on your mind, you're public enemy number 1. But if you're a friendly community of farmers and inventors, you're probably one of the most liked groups. It's truly up to you. However, don't expect to not have your hand forced from time to time. Remember, you can't always be the nice one. Sometimes you have to make that rash decision. I hope you know what you're doing. Wow. This has been a really fun series to make, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. I'd greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. However, you don't have to. I hope you have a good day, and here's some luck for your travels. Bye-bye.